Hello. We're getting into Numbers chapter 20, so we're going to begin halfway through thereabouts and then go for, only a number of verses. We won't even finish out the chapter, which is unusual for us in Numbers because usually I'm reading, say, like a chapter or two at a time, usually because there's a prolonged narrative or there's something dealing with counting because it is the book of Numbers. But we're actually going to be looking at a relatively short section, and I think it touches on an issue that we can really get into today, especially as we're talking about different elections and points of view with our governments, because this is one of the hot topic issues, and I'm going to be talking about immigration. Now, of course, it's going to be a very different situation for the Israelites here in the book of Numbers, but there are a lot of concerns that we do have. So I think we can really apply the scriptures to this and see what's going on. So before I get into the text itself, I do want to have a bit of prayer, and we'll have Psalm 119, section Gimel. So this is Psalm 119, verses 17 to 24 as our prayer. Do good to your servant, and I will live. I will obey your word. Open my eyes that I may see wonderful things in your law. I am a stranger on earth. Do not hide your commands from me. My soul is consumed with longing for your laws at all times. You rebuke the arrogant who are cursed and who stray from your commands. Remove from me scorn and contempt, for I keep your statutes. Though rulers sit together and slander me, your servant will meditate on your decrees. Your statutes are my delight. They are my counselors. Glory be to the Father, and to the Son, and to the Holy Spirit, as it was in the beginning, is now, and will be forever. Amen. So in this section of Psalm 119, it is talking about how we are with God more than we are with the rest of the world itself being, the physical reality, what we use to live in abundance in this body. But we are but sojourners here, or as it's translated in Psalm 119 here, a stranger upon the earth. So this means that, yes, we are living only a time here, and truly the place which is our permanent abode is with God himself. Now, of course, this can also be on earth. We can dwell with God on earth, and that was the point of Jesus Christ coming in the flesh, to dwell with us here in this world. But then you also have the temple and tabernacle in the Old Testament, and since we are talking about the book of Numbers today, they will be looking towards the tabernacle, the tent of meeting, where God meets with them there. But really, we're looking to where God is as home. So we're going to be journeying through this world, similar to how the Israelites journeyed through the desert. Like there's nothing of the world itself that's sustaining us. It's always God giving to us what we need to be sustained while we're here in this world. And if we're looking to going beyond this world, going into the paradise, and for the Israelites, this was the tangible paradise of the promised land. But for us, the paradise is a little bit more spiritual in the paradise to come. So if we're looking at that, then God will be giving us what we need to go beyond this world, beyond the earth, so that we can go into the new heavens and new earth. But I digress a little bit, because I don't want to focus so much on the destination as, what are we doing while we're here? Because Psalm 119, in this little section here, section Gimel, it is talking about, I'm a stranger here in this world, but please show to me your commands, give me your law so that I might act rightly. So we're looking to, wherever we are, because we always want to dwell with God, and so wherever we are with him, whether it's sojourning through this world, not having a permanent place, because our permanent place is in the world to come, regardless of whether we're just journeying here or permanently staying there, it's always going to be in accordance with God and his word. This is what we want. So we'll keep that in mind as we flip back to Numbers chapter 20, and we'll be looking at verses 14 to 21. So this is just a relatively short narrative. So I want to introduce it in terms of where it's appearing here in the book of Numbers, in terms of how the Israelites have been moving thus far. Okay, so the book of Numbers, it might not seem like it, but we've already we've already gone through quite a few years already. In fact, from the beginning of the book to this point in time, we're getting close to about 38 years, thereabouts anyways, which may surprise some people because you're like, oh, well, when did that happen? I don't remember there being so many events that this is occurring. And yeah, no, we don't. But in the past few chapters, we just kind of skipped over many, many years because you have in chapters 13, 14, where the Israelites are coming to the edge of the promised land, rejecting it, and then God curses them, so they wander in the desert. And they wander in the desert for a total of 40 years, which means from the time of Mount Sinai to the entrance to the Holy Land, that's 40 years. So between Mount Sinai and the rejection, that's a space of 2 years. So you do have them wandering in the desert for quite some time, but it's just not really recorded because there isn't really much to record. So the things that are seen as important would be the rebellion of Korah and then also the proper respecting of the priesthood. And I'll be touching on that in my next devotion through the book of Numbers, because we're going to look at the text just beyond this, which is the death of Aaron. So that will be a very important marker for us in the book, and as well as, well, how do we understand this in faith? Like, how do the Israelites understand this in faith, and how do we look towards a priesthood which does not fail, which does not die, but continues on eternally? But I digress. Okay, so let's get into the text for today. So the Israelites are at the end of the wandering, so now they're making their way into the promised land as God has directed them. So the previous generation has almost all died off, and they're coming to the land of Israel, and they want to take a shortcut, and that's going to be the focus of the text today, because this is going to feature the conflict between the nation of Israel, which is just wandering in the desert, and the nation of Edom, which is situated to the, well, mostly just to the east side of the land of Israel, but more southeast side of Israel. So if you think of your ancient geography and you're trying to think, well, okay, this is what Israel looks like. Well, if you look to the Dead Sea, Edom would have the space east of the Dead Sea, thereabouts. That would be the kingdom of Edom. And I'll get into the nation of Edom, who it is, why they're hostile to the Israelites. I'll be getting into that as we progress. So first I want to just have the reading of the text, and then we can start getting into the text itself. So Numbers chapter 20, beginning at verse 14. Moses sent messengers from Kadesh to the king of Edom, saying, "This is what your brother Israel says. You know about all the hardships that have come upon us. Our forefathers went down into Egypt, and we lived there many years. The Egyptians mistreated us and our fathers, but when we cried out to the Lord, he heard our cry and sent an angel and brought us out of Egypt. Now we are here at Kadesh, a town on the edge of your territory. Please let us pass through your country. We will not go through any field or vineyard or drink water from any well. We will travel along the king's highway and not turn to the right or to the left until we have passed through your territory." But Edom answered, "You may not pass through here. If you try, we will march out and attack you with the sword." The Israelites replied, "We will go along the main road, and if we or our livestock drink any of your water, we will pay for it. We only want to pass through on foot, nothing else." Again they answered, "You may not pass through." Then Edom came out against them with a large and powerful army. Since Edom refused to let them go through their territory, Israel turned away from them. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. So I do want to get into just kind of the surface level, what's going on. So on the surface level, you have two nations. One is a nomadic nation at this point in time, so they're coming out of the land of Egypt. You can even say that they're a bit of a refugee nation at this point in time because they are having no permanent place and they're living off the fat of the land. Thanks be to God that God is giving the land plenty of fat, specifically with bringing them to sources of water, as well as giving them manna every single day. So, of course, they can survive in the desert. God is taking care of them. But it is still a nomadic nation, a refugee nation, and this is coming to a nation which has had a permanent place in the land of Edom for quite some time. Now, for modern geography, if you think about the land of Edom today, well, where would the land of Edom be? It would be about the southern half of the kingdom of Jordan right now. So the Jordanians, they themselves are descendants of the Edomites. Now, of course, there's a whole bunch of different nationalities mixed in, as happens over the millennia. So you do have, say, different Arab peoples, because you have the Arab conquests in the 7th century AD. So some of the Jordanians, of course, mixed in with Arab bloodlines, but they themselves will be Edomite background. So, so you have a nation that's been there for thousands. At this time that the Israelites are coming over, that nation has been there for a few hundred years, because Israel, they were camping out in Egypt for a few hundred years at this point in time. They went into there around 1800 BC, and right now they're getting towards 1400 BC as they're trying to make their way into the Promised Land. So that's about 400 years, but you don't really get to the kingdom, Edom really being established until a couple hundred years before that. So Edom has existed in this territory for close to 500 years or so. Yeah. So to give you an idea, the colonial settlements of the United States, they're around 500 years old. So if you think like, oh yeah, it is the nation of the United States or the nation of Canada, and suddenly there's this huge, gigantic wall of people who are trying to say, oh yeah, we want to pass through to rich pastures, and you go like, oh no, who is this at my border, my southern border, who wants to pass through and journey along maybe into Canada, because let's put this in as the United States. So you have the United States, and you have this gigantic mass of people who want to pass through your nation. Maybe they think, oh yeah, well, things will be greener in Canada, and we do have some green in Canada. There's also a lot of snow, so things will be greener and whiter in Canada. But you could have all these people try to pass through to Canada, let's say. Maybe that's their goal, is to pass through to Canada. And then they go like, okay, United States, we just want to pass through. Please allow us to pass through. And the United States is going, why on earth are you trying to pass through our sovereign territory? Like, you with this gigantic mass of people. This definitely was an issue a few years ago in President Trump's first I want to say reign. A lot of people would characterize it as such. But first term as president, like, this was one of the issues, and Trump was saying, no, we can't allow a whole bunch of people coming from the South and Central America into the United States. And there's a lot of flack for him on this, and some people are supporting him, some people weren't. So you can see that this is a bit of a contentious issue, and you don't really know what's going to happen, because the issue that was being brought up is like, well, if they come into the United States, well, who are they? Where did they come from? And what are they hoping to really do? Is they can tell us one thing and do another. So rather than compromise your own territory, which you've spent centuries guarding, you have to make a decision for what are you going to do. So this is why I'm saying that this is a fairly relevant text to today, even though it's not talking exactly the same thing. We can see that, yeah, there are some relevant issues here. Okay, so that's kind of it on the surface, but I'll be getting into some of the nuance as we go through. So I'll just go through this verse by verse so that we can see kind of what's going on. So Moses sent messengers from Kadesh to the king of Edom. So why is Moses doing this? Well, Moses and the nation of Israel, they are kind of making their way to the Promised Land, and they know the general geography. They do. So they think, oh, well, we can cut through Edom because they're in the desert there in the south. So they can cut through Edom, get into Israel there, a bit in the north. So this would be advantageous for them to cut off some time of their journey rather than going all around Edom and then trying to get over the Jordan into the promised land there. So in order to do this, though, Moses sent out messengers to try and solve things diplomatically, which is what nations should be doing. We should be trying to solve this diplomatically rather than by brute force. So Moses sends out some messengers, and he's basically trying to make an appeal. And in the ancient world also, you would find that this happens all the time. You would have people sending messengers all over the place if you're trying to deal with any nations. Like we still do it now. We just have a system of diplomats to do this. But in the ancient world, you don't really have a system of diplomats. Well, some nations sort of do. But in the ancient world, typically you don't, so you'd be sending some messengers just trying to describe what they hope to do. So they'd be going to, of course, the ruler of the location. So in this case, the king of Edom. And normally if they would be doing this, they would actually be giving tribute. So if you want yourself to be heard, you'd have to give something. And we still have this to a degree in the modern world, because if we're trying to have talks between nations, sometimes there's an expectation, oh yeah, well, we want to have a lot of pomp and circumstance around this meeting, so you treat whoever's coming as a delegate in a very, very nice way, and with nice accommodations, good food, stuff like that. Maybe you'd also try to show off some of the features of your nation, maybe take them out to shows or different culturally significant things. So yes, we still have this the show of tribute today, but in a very, very different way than the ancient world. In the ancient world, it was more, here's gold or silver, and then also some products made locally within our nation, so likely more food, but you could also give tribute of animals. Like that's decently documented in the ancient world, giving tribute of different animals or even musical instruments. That's happened. But I digress. I'm going to be digressing a lot on this, I think, because I get to be a history nerd with this particular section. Anyways, so Moses sent messengers. So this is what your brother Israel says. Okay, that's interesting. Your brother Israel. Why are they referring to themselves as the brother of the land of Edom? Okay, so who on earth are the Edomites? That is a good question. Now, for anybody who is in the church, well, odds are you've heard Edom come up a number of times in different Bible readings, but you may not be familiar to their origins, which makes me a little sad, because I'd hoped that something would have stuck with Sunday school. Because Sunday school, this would come up at some point in time, because this actually goes back to the story of Jacob and Esau. So Jacob and Esau were the twin brothers of Isaac. So you have Abraham. Abraham is the one who receives promises from God. Like, you will have land, you will have many descendants. So Abraham goes, yes, I want to have these things. Then he goes through his life and is wondering, so after decades he's wondering, God, why don't I have an heir yet? Why haven't I produced a child? And then God gives him a single heir at the time, which is Isaac. And Isaac is the one through whom all of God's promises will be fulfilled. Now, of course, Abraham has other children, but it's through Isaac that everything is reckoned. Like, this is the one that God will work the promise of the Savior through the promised Savior Jesus Christ. So to come through this, you have Isaac having children. This is going to be Jacob and Esau. Now, they were already wrestling each other in the womb, so you think your sibling rivalry is bad. This is really bad. And as they're competing, Isaac, he basically asks his brother for the blessing that God would give him through their father Isaac, because Esau comes in one day from the hunt. He's famished, and Jacob goes, okay, I'll give you some food that I made, but only if you give me your birthright. And Esau actually does trade him the birthright for that. That's kind of showing his contempt for God's promises. and then when Jacob actually capitalizes on this, and he does so years later when Isaac is about to die, so Isaac wants to give the birthright, and then Jacob deceives his father into thinking that this is Esau before him, so Isaac mistakenly gives Jacob the birthright. But again, Esau already traded it for stew, so yes, it is properly Jacob's. And then Jacob, he starts the nation of Israel. So all Israelites are descendants from him. His other name actually is Israel. Now, the two brothers do meet up again in adulthood, and this is well documented in the book of Genesis. And what happens is Jacob thinks, oh no, I took his birthright, he's going to kill me. But Esau, he kind of mellowed out since his initial anger. So he actually does welcome him back. Now, Jacob doesn't really trust him, so he doesn't really camp with him, and he kind of goes another way. But yeah, you do have the two brothers there. And Jacob is the one who goes the way of the nation of Israel. This is part of the promise that God gives to Abraham, and then also to Isaac, and then to Jacob. Now, Esau, he has what is left, so he goes to the east of Jordan, and the east of the Dead Sea, so to the land that becomes known as Edom. So why Edom? Well, Edom is actually related to the word for red, basically, because Esau is supposed to have red hair, and he was a very hairy person, so he was nicknamed, which is part of the name Esau, but that's why he was also nicknamed Edom. So Edomites are those who are descendants from Esau. So they're not Israelites, but they're from the brother of Israel, Jacob, who is Esau, Edom. So the family rivalry continues on from there. So it doesn't really come up too much before this time in Numbers, because you do have a little bit of it in Genesis there with the actual two brothers, and then it doesn't really get mentioned there again. So it's only here when we get to the book of Numbers that they go like, okay, well, you're our brothers, like we're descendants from the same people, so same family. So why don't we get together? But as we'll see here, Edomites are not really willing to work with him on this, and Edom is still very contentious with the nation of Israel afterwards. So the book of Obadiah, which everybody remembers, right? No, I don't think most people remember. Anyways, it's the shortest book in the Old Testament. And it's a prophecy after the fall of Jerusalem. So after the Babylonians come in and take over Jerusalem, Obadiah gives a prophecy against Edom, because Edom, the nation of Edom, were the ones who were trying to basically capitalize on this. So they were helping support the Babylonians, because then they're like, oh yeah, well then we can take some of the blessing of the land of Israel for ourselves. So they try to take part of the spoil. So yeah, you still see this rivalry continue on at that point in time. And then you also see it in Jesus' day, because you have King Herod. Well, who is King Herod? Well, he's not a Jew. He's not an Israelite. He's not a descendant of Israel. He's actually an Edomite, or an Idumean, as it was known in those days. So he is ruling the land of Israel as a foreigner, somebody who is not an Israelite himself. And when you have the legitimate messianic king of Israel pop up, then he's like, nope, I'm not letting him take over the kingdom, so he tries to kill Jesus, even though Jesus is a baby at this point in time. But to be quite honest, that might not be one of the worst things that Herod actually does. Like, he's a very horrible person. He made some nice buildings and forged some good alliances, but he was a horrible human being. Anyways, so we still see some of that rivalry at this time, and now with some of the Palestinians, even today in the modern era, some of them are still claiming Jordanian descent, so Edomite descent, even though some of them are also from some Arabic descent today in the conflicts going on between Israel and Palestine, then also, to a degree, Jordan. Not a lot Jordan, but some Jordan. So yes, this is a sibling rivalry that has continued on for nearly 4,000 years. Again, you think your family fights are bad. This is very, very contentious. However, we do see them getting along at least a little bit. So in the book of Job, Job himself is most likely an Edomite, as well as the friends talking to Job, most likely they're Edomites. Do we know absolutely for sure? Some of them, yeah. But we don't exactly. We just have an idea that Job is a foreign powerful man. Greatest man of the East, so that could actually be the land of Edom, but we don't know for sure. Okay, so I've gone on about this a lot. So we're getting back to the message from Moses to the land of Edom. So we know that there is a bit of a family connection here, but there can also be a bit of a rivalry. So Moses is trying to treat this as a family matter, so he goes, this is what your brother Israel says. So he's sending his messengers to the king of Edom. So your brother Israel says to you, you know about all the hardships that have come upon us. And probably, at least to a kind of light extent, because you don't really know everything that's going on. However, if you do have the most powerful nation in the world, one of the most powerful nations in the world in that time, which would have been the nation of Egypt, kind of brought to its knees by God, so that the Israelites can escape that nation, then yeah, you would have kind of heard about that, especially since this is about 40 years later after that point in time, so news has been able to travel about this. Yeah, so I should also mention, based on ancient hegemony, so this is also kind of areas of influence. So land of Edom, kingdom of Edom, would also be under some of the control of Egypt. So rather than Egypt ruling the land itself, basically what they're relying on is tribute from Edom. So Egypt won't try to take over that land and then resettle it with its own people. Kind of a protection racket, if you will. However, part of this is also actual protection. So if Edom gets invaded by any northern power, they can always appeal to Egypt, and Egypt would help them out because they are a good trade partner with Egypt. So yes, since they would have some connections to Egypt, they would probably know what's going on with the Israelites. As to the extent of the oppression of the Israelites, I don't know if they would fully know this, but they would have some idea of it. So Moses elaborates on this. So verse 15 in Numbers 20. Our forefathers went down into Egypt, and we lived there many years. Yeah, about 4 centuries now. So, the Egyptians mistreated us and our fathers. Again, yes. Now, this wasn't always so. So we find in the beginning of the book of Exodus, because Genesis leaves off with the family of Israel coming into the land of Israel. So Joseph was sent there beforehand as a slave, and then he worked himself up to be the second most important person in the entirety of the kingdom. And when his family was trying to get food during a famine, well, Joseph had some of his own agenda there. But eventually what happened was the Israelites came down. I think it was about 70, 72 people, thereabouts. And they lived in Egypt. Now, over time, they, of course, grew to be a mighty nation. So part of the book of Exodus is just recapping what happened between Joseph and Moses. And it is basically, well, the people really prospered because of what God was doing among them. So much so that within that nation, the Egyptians themselves were getting kind of wary of this, because there's like, oh, well, these are foreign people, they're not true Egyptian. So then they oppressed them, made them slaves, even though that wasn't part of the deal back with Joseph. But as the book of Exodus says, like, yeah, there was a Pharaoh who didn't know about Joseph. And again, 400 years ago. So yes, this can happen. So, During that time, massive oppression of the Israelite people, and they were very much oppressed. Now, it wasn't the entirety of the time they were there, they weren't oppressed, but for the last while, they definitely were. So Moses says, mistreated us and our fathers, so this was going around for at least a couple generations. Okay. Verse 16. But when we cried out to the Lord, he heard our cry and sent an angel and brought us out of Egypt. So you're going like, okay, well, where's this angel? I haven't noticed an angel being talked about, but this is referred to in the background, and it does come up in the book of Exodus, as there's mention that God will send his angel before the Israelites to clear their way. So yes, God has definitely sent messengers around him, the messengers of the angels, to guard and protect the people as they move. So yes, this is going out. And the cry out to the Lord, like this is also very much what we find in the book of Exodus, is that's kind of how it's framed. The people were being oppressed, so they sent out a cry. And God heard it and basically brought about everything that was brought about. Okay. So now we are here at Kadesh, a town on the edge of your territory. So yes, as they're coming to the edge of the territory, they're trying to be respectful. They're not just barging in and trying to force their way through. They want to make sure everything is above board with this. So yeah, and if they did try to barge their way through, then of course the king of Edom would come out and try to destroy them. Now, this is also going to be contentious because Edom, or Jordan, that part of Jordan today, is full of mountains. So, and this also comes up in the book of Obadiah. It's talking about the people living in mountains, living in caves, and you could even make some fortresses there. So if you're going around mountain passes, well, you're going to have lots of people firing arrows at you or throwing rocks and basically obliterating your people as they're trying to march through these mountain passes. And they won't be able to really fight back, because how are you going to get into those places where you're going to have all these missiles coming from? So, yeah, they want to make everything above board. They want to be respectful, but they also don't want to have a fight, because they could very much potentially lose. So unless God is saying, like, yes, I will help you defeat the Edomites, which God doesn't do, they're not going to go in there. And God really doesn't speak against them here, and this is in part because that there was a bit of a blessing that went out with Esau. So God is looking after their nation to a degree. But we do find that they fall into sin quite regularly. So there's many passages against Edom, speaking against Edom in the different prophets. And with this incident here, where they're rejecting Israel being given safe passage through their land, we even find in excuse me, in Deuteronomy, God's divine word saying, yeah, because of this, you're not allowed to have certain relations towards my tabernacle, to the place of worship with me. So an Edomite or a Moabite who settled in the land of Egypt, in the land of Israel, I mean, and even marry into the people of Israel, it'd still be a few generations before they are allowed to come into the presence of the tabernacle. In part, that's because they're disrespecting the people of God here. Okay, verse 17. Please let us through your country. We will not go through any field or vineyard or drink water from any well. We will travel along the king's highway and not turn to the right or to the left until we have passed through your territory. Okay, so what's being promised here? Well, it's being promised that they're not going to take any of the nation's food. Now, to a degree, we can say, oh yeah, well, this makes sense for the Israelites because they've been taken care of in the desert by God, so God can give them all the manna that they need to go through there. He's also supplied them with water so that they can go through here. So it's not necessarily going to be that onerous of a thing for them to forego any of the fruits of the field that are here in the land of Edom. Not that Edom has a lot. Again, it's more mountainous territory. And the nation of Israel go along the highway. Well, what is the highway? Well, it is the highway. And it is literally the highway. So it's the raised road so that you can travel on without being harassed by anybody who's at the side there, because if you're on the same level as anybody else, they could actually come at you. So the highway is usually raised. And if you're on that road, like it's a very direct road, so you'd have roads coming off of it, but the highway is the more direct route. So really what the Israelites are saying is, we will try to get through your land as fast as possible without using any of the resources that you need to feed your people. So this does sound like a decent deal. Like they just want to go through. They just want permission to do this. But Edom answers, verse 18, you may not pass through here. If you try, we will march out and attack you with the sword. And you go like, whoa, that's a drastic response here. They're like, what's up with that? Why aren't they allowing this nation of 2 million people, many of which are men of fighting age, and there is a census in the book of Numbers giving you the fighting age of the men, like how many hundreds of thousands this would be. So this is potential conscription numbers for an army, hundreds of thousands. You go like, oh yeah, well, why wouldn't they let a nation in like this? A nation which has also dealt very harshly with the land of Egypt, where God laid low the nation of Egypt with a whole bunch of miracles 40 years ago. Why wouldn't you want this troublemaking nation around you? Yeah, so Edom is being pretty cautious about this. So they don't want to have this foreign people in their lands. And they will actually defend this if necessary. They will attack with the sword, which is figurative for just any sort of military intervention. So again, it's more mountainous territory, so odds are they're going to be using rocks and arrows to try and defeat these people if they try to come in. But I would like to tie this into some of today's goings-on, because we do have, I guess you could say, a refugee crisis in the world. Now, of course, there's been refugees kind of going even way back to the people of Israel. Like there have been conflicts, droughts, famines, earthquake, like many different things that have caused instability within nations and populations. So quite a few people are trying to seek asylum somewhere else. So this isn't anything new that this is happening. And many nations will definitely try to reach out and accommodate different refugees. And that has been the history of nations for millennia. It really has been. But the issue really becomes, well, how many people are you letting in, and what are they capable of doing? And capable insofar as, well, do they have any training or specialties to actually help out the nation that they're coming into? Are they able to take up different professions in order to help out in the nation, to advance it forward? Are they also able to take up certain vocations which could accommodate all the people who are now being influxed in? Because if you suddenly get, I don't know, 10,000 more people in an area, say like here in the city of Victoria, where the population is in the order of tens of thousands, if we suddenly get another 10,000 people, well, how are we going to be able to accommodate all these people? We don't have enough of doctors or houses or anything like that. So among these people, are there any who would be coming into the trades, the construction trades, so they could build more houses? Would there be any with medical training that they can try and accommodate the medical needs of the increased size of the community? You know, those sorts of things. Like some of these things are just very practical. But also you don't know what they're capable of, in the sense that, well, you're now bringing in 10,000 people into a space that's only accommodating like tens of thousands of people. Well, if there aren't any resources around because again, like you suddenly increase the population by a huge amount, well, is there enough to go around? Well, odds are there won't be, at least for a number of years. And how do you really accommodate this? And this might lead to some crime, because people, if they're starving, they'll be desperate and they'll try to get stuff. So if you have a sudden influx of population, what are they going to be capable of? How can they help the community? How can they negatively impact the community? And within some of the immigration crisis as is being understood today, there's also a whole bunch of people who are immigrants who are considered to be threats to the population that they're trying to immigrate into. And this would be in terms of, well, if they have, say, like criminal activity I'll just stick it to criminal activity. So are they going to continue in that line of action in the new place? So that's one of the concerns. So how are you going to deal with this? So Edom's route was, let's just bar them from the community, because theoretically, if the nation of Israel is just seeking asylum, well, they're like, okay, well, maybe we'll take 100 or 200 of you, maybe we can scatter you around so that you won't try to cause up trouble, like make a whole bunch of Israelite gangs here in the land of Edom. So yeah, you could try to integrate a whole bunch of people that way, which is what most countries do, because we recognize that there's quite a few people trying to come into our nations. So how can we integrate them into our communities so that we don't destroy the systems that we have in place, because we're creating so much demand for our infrastructure? So how can we spread them out so that we don't outstrip our capabilities of supplying what we need to supply? And how are we going to ensure that and document that those who are coming in here, that they will not be inclined towards any sort of criminal activity? Because again, these are people that are just outside of our nation. We don't know them well. Like, it isn't like your neighbor who's been in the house next to you for the past 10 years or so. Now, of course, somebody who moves in there, like, they could have been an immigrant. They could have just bought the house, moved to Canada, and they've been living there for 10 years. And then after 10 years, you're like, oh yeah, well, this person's just fine. Like, you wouldn't doubt any of that. But again, yeah, it's just not knowing these sorts of things. So you don't so you have to go by the record that person has in their own country. And if they don't have a record, like, how are you monitoring things to make sure that they're going smoothly? And not just assuming that people are criminals, of course not, but just seeing how this person can integrate into a new country, new language, new culture, all those sorts of things. So this is definitely something that we are talking about, and we do need to talk about, because there are quite a few people who are displaced in the world, who are trying to seek better opportunities, and also people who are just refugees and they have nowhere else to go. So we do have to think through, well, how do we accommodate all these people and do good to them? Because as we began with Psalm 119, if we're understanding ourselves as sojourners, well, we also understand we're sojourners in the world in relation to our faith, because God makes us citizens of heaven. We are not tied to the earth. The earth is, or this earth, because we're going to get the new earth in the world to come. So this earth, how are we living here? How are we using the resources? Are we treating people well with the resources that we have? And are we going to be doing things rightly? So when we see that there is injustice being done, and they're being done by, say, a disproportionate amount of foreign immigrants, then we have to decide, okay, well, do we actually want those foreign immigrants in our nation, the ones who are committing crimes? So this is going to be, this is an actual issue that's going on in the United Kingdom right now, with the scandal related to grooming gangs. And this has been going on for a while now. And there's immigrants from Pakistan, primarily Pakistan, from what I've heard anyways. I think there are some other nationalities in on this, but Pakistan led it. So there's immigrants from Pakistan who are trying to attack or kidnap or coerce women into the sex trade. So it's a horrible, horrible thing that's being done. And you have to wonder, like, okay, should we keep these people in the country? Can we tie these crimes to them? And if we can tie these crimes to them, are we going to put them in our criminal detention facilities? Or are we going to ship them back to where they came from? and have their home countries deal with these people that we do not want in our country. So there's that type of question. But again, there's still many people who are extremely beneficial for our nations, because the United States as well as Canada, like, we are built on immigration. As if you find somebody with my complexion here in Canada, it's not because my family lived here for 700 years. We haven't. It's that these nations were built by immigration. And some just, some unjust. Because you would also say, well, there's also black populations here in North America, and a lot of them were coming through the slave trade. Not all of them. Small proportion did not come through the slave trade. Today, quite a few of them are coming through different forms of immigration. Like I've been talking to people from Ethiopia and Calgary, Sudan, in Edmonton, where I was in different churches, and in both of those groups, like, they were coming in through different ways, just some regular for immigration and some actually coming through on refugee status. Also been seen South Africans and quite a few other people from different African nations. Oh, yeah, there's now a pastor in southern BC here in the mainland who's from Eritrea. So yeah, you do find quite a few of these people from different nations, different backgrounds, and some of them are coming over with very legal methods. Some of them not so legal methods, like those who were forced to come here from the slave trade. And then you also get to, like, these people with white-colored skin. And we came through colonialism. So if we're also talking about how colonialism has affected North America, this is also a hot topic issue, topic, I should say. And well, how do we understand this, especially with the native populations, the indigenous populations, who were here well before us and who are using the lands that we are now using. So this is a huge issue, and we're fighting about it even today, even despite the fact that some of these territorial conflicts originated hundreds of years ago. So with Edom being cautious about letting through 2 million people, thereabouts, through their borders to get into another land, well, of course they're going to be skeptical about this, because why would an entire nation just go through without touching anything? They would most likely try to grab a whole bunch of stuff. And you could try to argue the case for different nations over time, because there would be, I'm trying to think of a good example. So I can think of the mercenary armies of Carthage. It's not a good example, but that's one I can think of. Trying to think of other ones. I can't really think of it. Okay, so I'll just use the mercenary armies of Carthage. So, Carthage was a North African kingdom, empire, actually. And they had a lot of control over the Mediterranean area. And this eventually came to head when they were fighting against Greek colonies and Rome. Now, the first major conflict came about with what was known as the First Punic War, because the Punic peoples were the Carthaginians. So, now Carthage had control over part of the island of Sicily. There were Greek colonies on the other part, and there was a conflict between the Greeks and the Carthaginians. And the Greeks put out a call for help to Rome, which was becoming a big power in the Italian peninsula in that time. So Rome gets involved, and Rome sends over soldiers and armies and fleets and other things. And you have this big conflict, and eventually it ends with Carthage's defeat. So Carthage has to give up its territories on the island of Sicily, so that needs to deport a lot of people back to North Africa. And some of the people that it's deporting would be the mercenary armies that it's using. And these mercenary armies, a lot of them are Greek. So you have Greeks fighting Greeks and Romans on behalf of the North African population, which originated from Phoenicia or Canaan. So yeah, lots of politics going on here. Anyways, what I'm trying to say is you have a foreign population that is now in North Africa, and they want to go back home. They want to go back home to Greece. They want to go back to the territory that they're familiar with. So they're going to just be passing through the land of Carthage, but they also want to be paid for their time as mercenaries. Now, Carthage says, yes, we will pay you, but not until we get all the mercenaries here so we can all pay you at once. But since you're moving tens of thousands of people from the island, which is like several days journey away by boat, like this is taking a long time. So mercenaries are now in a place without any money or much food. Keep in mind, Carthage is also being poor from military expenditures for the war, which lasted 23 years. So yeah, they're not happy, and then they start leading a revolt in Carthage's capital. And so part of this is, oh shoot, we have to now fight off a mercenary army in our home territory after just losing a major conflict where half of our colonies are now gone. So yeah, this is something that can happen. Again, the mercenaries just want to go back home, but there comes to be some sort of tiff, and then suddenly you're now in a major conflict. This is not good. So yeah, of course you would find that some people at different points in time would have these conflicts erupt. Say like even with people who are seen as kind of permanent residents, those who came over from the slave trade into the United States. Like there is still lots of conflict with that. There's even the Civil War was trying to argue, well, how do we understand slavery in our nation? Should we stop this? Should we return them to Africa? Should we keep them here, integrate them, just free them? And there's discussion about this. It really came to a head with the Civil War in the United States, and they had to try and figure out what they were going to do with all these people that they imported in. So it wasn't their choice to be there, and even today, the black population of the United States is still pretty ticked off about this, even after slavery was abolished 150 years ago. So yeah, these things have long-lasting consequences. Even if we just assume at the time that this is going to be okay, well and done. I can also think of, say, like the Irish riots and attacks in the United States, the northeast United States, a while back, because you had a whole bunch of Irish trying to get back at the British by attacking some of the Americans who were British colonies, and then also them staging some attacks from the northernmost states in the United States, going into the territory of Canada, which was a British territory. So sometimes they would just attack Canadians because they're British. At which point you also have the Quebecois, who are culturally, genetically, linguistically French, fighting off these Irish people because the Irish people are saying, "Hey, you stupid British, stop being British," or well, not necessarily stop being British, but some of the political conflicts that's going on in British Parliament over in United Kingdom there. Yeah. So again, this gets pretty complicated as we try to go through this. So yeah, we have to see this as something complex that we need God's guidance to work through. So God definitely would have kept the Israelites journeying to the promised land. But of course, as Israelites themselves are a whole bunch of whiny, rebellious jerks, because we just got through part of this. They rejected the land of Israel. They also rejected the priesthood. So you have God putting down the revolt that was led because God forbid them going into Israel because they already rejected God. You also have God putting down the rebellion of Korah because Korah was jealous of the priesthood. So we're going to be getting into, in less than a chapter, how the Israelites are going to be rebelling against God again, and God has to put them down again. So yeah, if they are going through Edom, like Edom is right to be cautious about these rebellious and stiff-necked people, as God himself calls them. So Edom forbids this, and what is Israel's response? So Israel tries to make an appeal. So we will go along the main road, and if we or our livestock drink any of your water, we will pay for it. We only want to pass through on foot, nothing else. So already here you're seeing or hearing a little bit of a concession, because in the first message from Moses, he says, like, no, we're not having any water whatsoever. And then Edom says, no, don't try this. And then he's saying, okay, well, if we have some of your water, we'll pay for it. So already Moses kind of sees, like, yeah, well, the people might actually do something stupid and try to take something. So we'll be good for this. We will pay for it. But Edom is not having this. So verse 20, and again they answered, you may not pass through. Then Edom came out against him with a large and powerful army. Yeah, so Edom's definitely not allowing this to happen. And I'll just finish off verse 21. So since Edom refused to let them go through their territory, Israel turned away from them. So Israel is now taking another route, and Israel is seeing them as kind of an enemy people from this point on. And yeah, this really works itself out through history, and we see different conflicts between the land of Edom and Israel over time in the scriptures. And again, as I was saying, like, yeah, we could even say that the Israeli-Palestinian conflict today, to a small degree, is a continuation of this conflict. Not a huge degree, but a very slight tangential way. So yeah, it is highly contentious. But what should we take away from this as Christians? So at the very beginning, I was talking about how we are sojourners in this world. Kind of coming off of Psalm 119 there, verse 19 specifically, and it's saying that, yeah, we are sojourners upon the earth. We're strangers here. And if we're going with the well-attested hymn, yeah, we are but strangers here, heaven is my home. Now, just to contextualize that hymn, we are definitely citizens of heaven, as St. Paul says in Philippians chapter 3. But when we're talking about heaven being our home, heaven is where we're dwelling with God. So when we see the new heavens and new earth at the end of the book of Revelation, you could also see glimpses of this in the end of book of Zechariah, end of Isaiah. If they're still picturing kind of a heavenly abode, but on earth. So the earth is itself being renewed. So this is this is basically the new Eden where God himself is dwelling among us. So this is heaven, a heavenly understanding of earth. But you still have kind of worldly aspects. So we are being resurrected, but we're resurrected in the flesh. Our flesh still lives. So if we have Eden at the very beginning being that God has created us with flesh and blood so that we may eat and drink and be merry here in this world, well then why wouldn't that be the restored creation that he'll bring about through Jesus Christ? Jesus Christ himself, after his resurrection, like he's showing his divinity through his humanity, through his body afterwards, and some of the visions that he appears, say, to like St. Paul on the road to Damascus or St. John on the island of Patmos, which begins the book of Revelation. But he still has his earthly body. So the resurrected body isn't something that we just get and then we're like, okay, yeah, now we're just spirit now, and we just chuck it aside as we go into the heavenly kingdom. No, we still have some worldliness, some physicality to us, some earthiness to us. So we do understand this as we're going through. And we're looking to what is to come, but we're recognizing that, yeah, we still need to respect everything that has to deal with the body. We're not just being purely aesthetic, but not in terms of beauticians, no, but aesthetic in the sense of, well, we don't care about anything of this world. We just want to live spiritually. This is more the case with some of the Eastern religions, where they're foregoing all the worldly things, all worldly desires, and then just try to live as minimally as possible. But for us, no, God gave us everything so that we might enjoy it. So how do we honor and guard it? So for us, we're recognizing, yeah, we're sojourners in this land of the world. And even though we might live in houses or apartments, and we might have permanent addresses, we're not going to be living there 500 years from now. Such as the Edomites, like the people who founded the land of Edom, they weren't there 500 years later when the Israelites were coming in. No, there's different people there. So for us, we can just recognize that, yeah, we have all these permanent things, or things that we would call permanent in terms of worldly scale. But they will fade away. They will. So for anybody who's coming to us, such as refugee, immigrant, somebody who is a sojourner, how do we understand them? Well, as we ourselves are sojourners in this world, looking to the world to come, they are sojourners in this land, looking for new lands, so that they might actually receive some good. So, as we can relate to them in that sense, well, how can we take care of them so that they might actually be fed, warmed, and full? This is why in quite a few laws in the Old Testament, as well as in some of the prophecies, we find mention of sojourners. Usually it's widows, sojourners, and orphans. Those are the most vulnerable people in society. And yeah, sojourners really would be, because they don't have any permanent place here. They can be kicked out and thrown away. And that's really scary. And we've seen this from generation to generation. That's a lot of the refugees right now. They're thrown away from where they belong. They might be oppressed in some way, shape, or form. So how do we understand these people? Well, we should definitely help them. And I put the caveat there, we should know our limitations when we're trying to help people. Because we can't just go oh yeah, so all these people who are having this conflict over in, I was talking with the Sudanese in Edmonton about their conflict in Sudan, which is now Sudan and South Sudan. So quite a few of their people are coming why don't we get the hundreds of thousands of displaced people and just suddenly place them all in Canada? Well, we're going to run out of food, we're going to run out of housing, we're going to be running out of everything, really, if we do something that drastic. And then how do things turn out in Canada? Well, we're just going to end up in the same state as Sudan there, where everybody's competing over resources and fighting against each other. And if you're just plucking up a whole bunch of people and putting them in another nation, well, you don't necessarily know who you're plucking up, so you might even have the same conflict, because there were two different groups of people there in Sudan who are having conflicts. Well, you might have those two groups of people in Canada right next to each other even, and then they'll just restart the conflict over here. So yeah, you just have a repeat of what's going on here, what's going on there over here in the new place that you might put them. So I have to be cautious about this. We have to do this with a loving and Christian heart, and sometimes that means dealing with the physical limitations that we have. But always, we do want to do this with the mind of Christ, looking to our salvation in Him, looking to His promises towards all people, and His command, love your neighbor as yourself. So, let's pray. Dear Lord, Heavenly Father, you created all human beings. You love them, you cherish them, and you promise daily bread to them. We ask you, O Lord, to equip us with the knowledge, the skills, and the abundance that we need, the abundance that comes from the material world that we need in order to care for the people who require these things. We ask you, O Lord, that you work through us to give those in need what they need, so that they might find solace in you. Help us always to be sharing you through our actions, but most especially our words, the word of the gospel, that all may believe and be saved and recognize that they don't depend just on worldly gifts, but on the spiritual gift of life everlasting. In Jesus Christ's name we pray. Amen. Let us bless the Lord. Thanks be to God.